Welcome back to Rodecast, guys. Hope y'all doing well out there. I'm your host, Rod, as always. And in this video, we're going to be talking about two different topics. First, we're going to be talking about the largest ICE facility that's being built right now in Texas. This one beats out Alligator Alcatraz, which is a relatively small facility, and also the largest facility to date, which was in California City. Now, I covered the California City facility last month, where a bunch of locals, they were trying to sue the city council and the mayor and trying to stop it from being built. It failed.
This is concerning, as several speakers spoke, that it doesn't just impact residents in California City, but all our communities throughout the state.
Cal City Mayor Marquette Hawkins spoke to me before the meeting. He says the city is expected to finalize water and sewage rates with Core Civic next month and provide what's necessary to open.
But the reality is we do not have the jurisdictional authority to stop any business from opening as long as they have all their ducks in a row, all their I's dotted, all their T's crossed, and they've met all the requirements that are required by them to open.
Now, this one is in Texas, and it's going to be the largest in the country. Second subject we're going to be talking about is the shutting down of the last migrant hotel that was used to house migrants during Biden's era, where there was an influx of illegals, basically, who are trying to fake claim asylum flowing into New York and many other sanctuary cities. And this was one of the places that they lived in. They were given taxpayer funding and amenities to stay in this hotel. And now it's being shut down. Now, this is not the end of the problems because these people had to go somewhere. Now they're being moved somewhere else, which is actually hurting New Yorkers even more.
More detention space will soon be available for migrants awaiting deportation, and it's here in the Lone Star State. Fox's Jennifer Griffin with more on the story.
The U.S. military is building the largest federal deportation detention center in America's history. The construction of Camp East Montana at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, began mid-July in response to a request from Homeland Security. Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson defended the use of the military base to initially detain 1,000 migrants awaiting deportation.
Once DoD achieves initial stand-up, we will finish construction for up to 5,000 beds in the weeks and months ahead. Upon completion, this will be the largest federal detention center in history for this critical mission, the deportation of illegal aliens.
So far, the Army has spent $232 million on the tent city at Fort Bliss. The U.S. Army oversees the $1.24 billion contract for the 5,000-bed ICE facility, and last month awarded the contract to build the facility to Acquisition Logistics, a Virginia-based company. In January, President Trump announced migrants would be sent to Guantanamo Bay, where Defense Secretary Hegseth promised the Marines could build a 30,000-bed facility. Those plans were halted when ICE standards were not being met for housing migrants. Construction ended after just 175 tents were stood up.
So did you guys catch what happened there? So even though Hegseth promised this big thing, it didn't work out because ICE actually has standards, and they're not gonna, skimp on that just to meet the number of beds. Because despite the lies told by the left about how these facilities are hellholes and people are being tortured and they're concentration camps, all this stuff, well, the concentration part might not be false because there is a concentration of illegal aliens in these places, right? That's true, but that doesn't mean they're being tortured. They say that just to make some Nazi parallels, which they always love to do, to try to make it seem like we're Nazis because we want to basically secure our borders and get these illegals out. So that's just a tactic they use. But nevertheless, Hegseth could not live up to his promise because ICE standards were not being met, so they slowed down the building of the facility now to the point where it's been halted. So I just want to provide that example as a counter to the ridiculous narrative on news media, particularly from the open borders people who try to pretend like these places are Nazi concentration camps, when in reality, ICE is basically going above and beyond to provide these people with a living standard that they do not deserve, in my opinion. But nevertheless, these places are not torture chambers. Okay, ICE has standards that they're maintaining in all the facilities that they run.
Defense Secretary Hegseth promised the Marines could build a 30,000-bed facility. Those plans were halted when ICE standards were not being met for housing migrants. Construction ended after just 175 tents were stood up. Quote, there are currently 33 high-threat illegal aliens and 8 low-threat illegal aliens at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. To date, 690 illegal aliens have been processed through Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. There is no new information on the status of the tent infrastructure.
And this Fort Bliss facility is going to be the biggest ICE detention center. So detention space is very important because just hunting down the illegals and detaining them is not enough, because we have to store them somewhere until we can ship them out. And that's why these facilities are very important. ICE and Homeland Security have been doing is like co-opting existing facilities and temporarily, transforming them into storage places for these people because they're out of beds. So we really have a problem and with storing these people, a place to put them until they can have their hearings, until we can ship them out. They have to stay somewhere. So we need to build a lot more facilities. And even with this facility, there's still not enough beds because they're arresting new people every day. So they need to get more places up and running, more buildings up and running, or temporary buildings up and running, tent locations, whatever. But I would say military bases are a great place to actually hold these people. Okay, we have a lot of abandoned facilities around the country as well. Those places can be renovated back into operation to serve as ICE detention facilities. That's something that they're actually doing. That California City facility that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that was a prison before. They're building it back up as an ICE facility. So that's what's going on there. Nothing but good news. Now let's move on to the Migrant hotel that's being shut down.
New York City announcing it will shut down its last controversial migrant hotel in the coming months. The Row NYC was remodeled into a migrant shelter back in October of 2022 to address the overwhelming influx of migrants coming to the city.
Before she goes on, I just want to show a picture. If that is not a third world invasion, which some people get on me in the comment section for saying that, they're like, oh, there's no invasion. What the hell do you call this if this is not a third world invasion? That does not look like New York. That looks like Ghana, West Africa or something. Okay. That does not look like America. And yes, America does have a certain look, and I think we all know it. All right. So anybody who says there is no third world invasion, I would point them to this picture. Okay. Now you can say that you have no problem with the third world invasion into our country. That's the position of the Democrats. Okay. But just don't deny that there is one. Because clearly there was one at least. Now there isn't because, Trump has gotten rid of most of the people who are coming in, the new ones. But we still have the invasion that Biden allowed in this country. All you have to do is just go to a blue city, and even in some red cities where we have this problem of too many of these people who have come in.
Mayor Eric Adams confirming the closure, calling it a, quote, major milestone. News Nation's Marcus Espinoza is live in Manhattan, right outside the Migrant Hotel there. Marcus, walk us through the closure and exactly what led to it, if you can.
Hey, Anna, good morning. Yeah, those pictures you showed there, very different image this morning behind me here. It was the first hotel converted in the city back in 2022 to handle that migrant surge. I'm just going to step out so we can take a look at it here. Not the case anymore. It is now going to be the last one to close, as it is now being shut down for that purpose there. The Midtown Hotel behind me served as an emergency shelter for thousands of asylum seekers since the city's shelter system hit a breaking point. Mayor Eric Adams saying New York City has helped more than 200,000 migrants move out of shelters and towards self-sufficiency. The timing reflecting a broader trend across the country. Arrivals have dropped sharply due to the immigration policies of the Trump administration they're putting into place here in New York, from about 4,000 per week at the height of the crisis to around 100 per week. Earlier this summer, the city closed its intake center at the Roosevelt Hotel and all tent facilities. Row NYC's contract, costing more than $5 million a month, expires in April and will not be renewed. That deal has already generated more than a whopping $170 million for the hotel since 2022.
By the way, that money that was given to the hotel where they made out like bandits, all that money is from a combination of federal funds and New York funds. Okay, I believe the federal government backstopped a lot of that funding. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a lot. And New York actually sued because the federal government tried to withhold some of that funding, Trump's administration, and the New York sued them. So they literally used not only New Yorkers' tax dollars, but also my tax dollars as a federal taxpayer to fund the third world invasion. Okay. And by the way, he said that these people moved on to self sufficiency. That's a bunch of BS. Okay. And even if they did, that's not a good thing. That means they took more apartments and houses, which are in very limited supply in New York, where even real Americans can't get housing in New York. And it costs an arm and a leg and a head to actually get even a small apartment in New York.
They're calling this a major milestone moving past the migrant crisis, but says the city's going to continue to support those in the system here. But a big shift from that policy just a couple years ago of converting New York City hotels to these migrant shelters. Very different view today here, as the first one to open is now going to be the last one to close for that purpose.
With the shutdown of the migrant hotel, we're thinking about, where there will be any migrants that are going to be housed in the state of New York as well. Marcus, can you answer that? Like, what's the plan now? If the funding isn't going to go here, where is it going to be diverted?
Yeah, so they're still going to make efforts to house these folks, right? The Department of Homeland Services here in New York gradually absorbing migrants as well, so they can try to help facilitate the folks that are here as well. So that's still going to be happening here. The city-run shelter network is absorbing these migrants, which as of last week was housing 92,000 people, including more than 35,000 migrants.
So did you guys catch that? The shelter system now has to take these people, which means there's still a burden on New York taxpayers and probably federal taxpayers too, depending on where that money for those shelters comes from. Mostly, I believe it's from local sources. So that means New York taxpayers are still footing the bill for these disgusting people who invaded their city, because the Democrats care more about helping third world people who have their own problems instead of helping Americans. Places in these shelters being taken by these illegals, which means that American citizens and New Yorkers specifically who cannot get those services, even though they're in trouble and they need shelter space, they can't get the help that they need because it's going to foreigners. This is what I'm talking about. Like when I say things like the Democratic Party cares more about foreigners than Americans, that I'm not saying that as an insult or some kind of gotcha. I'm saying that because it's factually true in the real world. And this is a perfect example of that. Okay. Democrats run New York. The city council to the mayor, they're all Democrats. There are no Republicans really in power. They have no power. There's a couple Republicans here and there in some districts, but they have no real power. Okay, the city council completely open borders. And that's the reason these people were let in the first place, by the way. It's not all Biden. Okay, Biden's people, it wasn't Biden at all, actually. It was the people around him who are lunatic, open borders people, and the even bigger lunatics in New York who don't give a damn about their own citizens that live in that state, but care more about foreigners and helping third world people who have problems instead of telling them to take care of their own problems, which is the proper response.
To step back from large-scale hotel use like the one we're standing in front of here, a shift also underway in cities like Chicago and Denver. Losing costly hotel contracts like this one reduces expenses, while New York continues to meet its legal right to shelter requirement, a balance that a lot of cities are dealing with across the country.
Yeah, those right to shelter laws passed by progressives who bleed their hearts out for foreigners, those are the laws that we need to get rid of, because it forces the government to fund these places because they can't just tell these people to get the hell out, which is the right response, and ship them out of America. But they can't do that because of the ridiculous laws passed by open borders progressives who, again, want to help foreigners over Americans. They want to deprioritize us and New Yorkers specifically, this is in New York, and help the illegals who have no right whatsoever to be in this land, in George Washington's country.
It's not just here in New York City, it's in other cities across the country. So this is really a microcosm of that. But we all remember those images back in 2022. It was very, very stark.
Yeah, a hotel in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan especially, goes for hundreds of dollars every single night. You know, it's difficult when you have friends who want to come and tour around New York City and one of the highlights in our country. And
yeah, and then it looks like a third world country. It's not so good. Anyways, the point is the problem is not solved. All that's happened is it's being shifted from these hotels to the shelters, which is, I would say, is even a bigger problem. Okay, the hotels obviously cost a lot of money, and that's a big hole in the budgets of New York and the federal money that they're getting. But this is even a bigger problem because it actually hurts real people, because the money that's supposed to go to actual Americans who are in trouble, homeless people and otherwise, and people who are addicted to drugs and who have a lot of problems who are in these shelters, instead of that money going to them, now it's going to illegals. And the New Yorkers keep voting them in. So that's their problem. Okay, a lot of this is actually self-inflicted. They put these bleeding heart, open borders people in power, so they got to suffer with it now. And that's all I got to say for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next one. As always, stay safe out there.